All right. Alrighty then. All right, let's go here. Timothy Wood. Hey, what is up, Timothy Wood? How are you? Chris Clough. Yo, Chris, what is going on? What is the dealio for Rizzle? I figured, what the hell? I know I usually do this. Oh. Can you hear me now? You should be. You should be able to hear me now. I thought I had it on mute for a second when I read that comment there, Chris. But I'm here. Yeah, the volume is rocking. How's everybody doing? Aaron Grimm says, I'm working on a few new videos. All right. Chansey464. Hiya, Zach. Hey, Chansey. How are ya? We got some audio. It's rocking on my end. You're a day early. I know, Meg. I know. I'm alone in the house, so I figured, why the hell not? Gonna order a pizza too. Definitely gonna order some Domino's tonight. I don't feel like cooking. It is what it is. Alright, you hear me now? Good. I don't know what happened. I didn't press mute or nothing. I don't know. But we're here. We are here. Alright. So, yeah, it's hump day, so we was getting busy tonight. That's what I want to know. Yeah. Angela, my favorite Polak, is here. Hey, Angela, how are you? I got some good news, man. I knocked out 3 videos today. 3. Now, take it, one of them's kind of short. Ended up being like a 12-minute long video. I was kind of surprised how short it was. But yeah, I knocked out 3 frickin' videos. The third one is actually uploading to YouTube right now for June 16th. Right? Yep, June 16th, yes. Which is a fabulous writer, by the way. And he's actually my neighbor. He's just south down in Georgia. It's a really long story that was broken up into 3 parts. It's phenomenal. He's a great writer. He wrote this for me. You won't find it anywhere else. It was exclusively made for me. It's called The Dogman of Carter's Lake. It is fantastic. I cannot wait for you guys to hear this series. Yeah. Eddie was creepy, huh? I don't know who Eddie is, but yeah. Only 3? Yeah, I mean, what are you talking about? Most narrators do 1 every 3-4 days. I'm knocking out 3 videos a day, uploading them every single day of the week except for Sundays. And by popular demand, a lot of you guys have been asking for more sound effects because I know that kind of separates me from other channels. It is extra work finding the right sounds and sound effects that go into certain parts throughout a story. And I've been doing that lately, like the past 2 or 3 videos. I kind of pick and choose which stories I want to add sound effects to. Especially if it's like Dogman, stuff like that. I'm going to start adding it to like certain stories. You know what I mean? Just to amp up the imagination for the listeners out there. Having a problem with this stupid computer chair. Even though I lock it in place, having it raised all the way up, it still frickin' keeps going down. I'm like, this frickin' chair's dead. I need to buy some CPVC and just shove it in there so it doesn't move. But I'm constantly battling my computer chair. It keeps low-riding on me. I was talking about views, but you put 3 videos out. I did three videos today, but all 3 of them are for the month of June because I'm ahead of schedule and I like to keep it that way. Can't wait to get to them. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Love Dogman, Eddie, and Not My Sister's Voice Story. Oh, man. I'm going to take these socks off. It's freaking hot, man. I'm about to strip naked up in here. Ain't got no webcam. You'll never know. Let me go ahead and move this microphone right here. Get a little bit closer to my mouth. Luis Reyes. Hey, Luis, how are you? And welcome to the Dark Forest. Hope all is well. Remember, all you sexy beasts out there, if you feel like donating, please do it through PayPal. Choose the family and friends option or simply use Cash App. Because OBS Streams likes to take a high percentage. So if you're feeling generous and spooky and sexy, donate to either one of those on the screen. It would just help me out tremendously, and that way nobody else takes my cut. Kelly says we're looking forward to them. Thank you, Kelly. I'm looking forward to them too. The Dogman of Carter's Lake is fabulous. I just completed part 1. I just finished editing it. I added some sound effects to it. Some really cool howls, some Dogman grunting, some vehicles crashing, windows shattering, you know, the good stuff. Now you want pizza? Yeah, I want pizza too. I think I'm going to be calling Domino's here. Probably in about, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes or so. Maybe less. Give myself a large pizza. Maybe pop on the old Netflix or Amazon Prime tonight. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the update. Shout out to the channel. Yes, Angela, shout out to the channel. Thank you. Good God, this chair sucks ass. I'm not even fat. Like, what the hell? I bought this chair on Facebook Marketplace, so it's probably 20 years old. Who knows? I just need to stick a piece of CPVC pipe in here so it can't keep lowering. I just got to make my way over to the Home Depot. Clark says, I had to close YouTube to get audio. That's weird. Yeah, because I didn't have my microphone on mute. It was working fine. That's weird. Well, glad you're back, and now you could hear my sexy voice. Do you want me to talk dirty to you, Chris? Yeah? Yeah? How about that Peterbilt, huh? It's got a big butt? Hmm? So, yeah, got some good stuff going. What's coming out tonight? Let me check. I forgot. What is coming out tonight? I totally forgot what was coming out tonight. My dogs go crazy when you use those sound effects. Don't do it. I'll make sure to put extra ambulance sirens in next time for you. Have it on full blast. There you go. That'll make them happy. The audio went out, huh? That's weird. Maybe it was some kind of glitch with YouTube then. Maybe it was YouTube, because my microphone is right in front of my face, and it's showing the microphone is working completely fine on the live stream with the mixer. And so it should be good. It should be doing all right. Oh, yeah, yes. Today's the 13th, right? Yes. We got some Deep Woods Nightmare stories tonight. Yes, Deep Woods Nightmare. Yeah, all right. My brother and I went camping. Yes. That is an interesting story. Actually, that's a pretty good one. That's almost a 30-minute video right there. I needed something good while I clean out the kitty litter. What are you scooping up shit and thinking about me? Chris, you naughty thing. Yeah, don't be pulling on my tail. Tell us a story. Okay, do you want me to read you a story, or do you want to hear like a true story about something? That's a good question. I could tell you guys a story if you want a story. I could look up the old email here and see what I got on file, or if you just want to know something about something, I could do it that way too. Whatever floats your boat. Let me see here. Let me see if I could find... There we go. I got a short little story. Oh, what the hell? Yes. Alright. Something's glitching with my computer. What's going on? Don't start something you can't finish, Zach. Well, I always finish. Whether you do or not, I still finish. Not saying I'm selfish, but I tend to finish first. Or last. Or at the same time. You dirty devil, Chris. I always finish. Okay. I got a short little story I could read you that I'm actually going to be putting together in a Deep Woods video somewhere in the near future. Let's see here. It's called... Now, I'm a-cappella in this, so, you know, if I make mistakes or run out of breath, it is what it is, right? It's called The Forest Hides Something. So this story is from the perspective of a boy from Oklahoma. The year is 1936, and I had just moved into a new wide open area. It was a house in the middle of a farmland in a forest nearby. On August 17th, a meteor hit a few miles away in the forest. It shook the entire house. I thought nothing of it at first. Sure, it was quite impressive and fascinating, but there was more of it. My dad wanted to see it in the forest. This stupid chair keeps falling on me. Holy shit. God, I'm like trying to read a story and I'm low-riding to the ground. That's not part of the story, by the way. Let's see here. My dad wanted to see it in the forest, so he went with my big brother and my uncle. I wasn't allowed to go, but I wanted to so bad that I snuck out. I followed them into the forest. The trees were very tall and the ground was grassless and animals could be heard. When they got to the crater it left, there was no meteor. It was getting dark and the animals were now silent. My uncle had brought a gun. He was always a bit of a skeptic, but he was nowhere to be around. But he was nowhere to be found until we looked. He was nowhere to be found until we looked beyond the crater. He was there, looking in the darkness as though he had seen something. He came back without saying a word. As we started to head home, I made sure that I made sure to be there before they found out. Went to bed. Later that night, I looked out the window towards the forest. My room was on the second floor at the end of the hallway. In the opening of the forest, I could see a deer. It was staring right at me. Once more, I thought nothing of it and went to sleep. When my dad and uncle went hunting the day after they went by themselves, 3 hours later, my uncle was running back home screaming. His face was drenched in blood. He kept telling us in a panic that a deer had bitten into Dad's neck and ran after him. After the ambulance came and all the other things, night had fallen once more. This night, I looked out the window again, and there was an owl on a branch. Guys, I'm pausing right here. This is totally sounding like some kind of freaking alien skinwalker, okay? You noticed it was a deer first, then it was an owl? And and there was like the whole meteor thing. Like I'm really getting some Skinwalker shape-shifting vibes right now. Okay, back to the story. All of a sudden, it started flying fast towards my bedroom window, hitting its body against it. The window started to crack. My uncle came rushing in and shot at it. He missed, but it flew away. I went to sleep in my mom's bed after that. Dawn came, and Uncle and I went fishing to get our minds off things. Well, wait, man, this guy's typos. Dawn came, and Uncle and I went fishing to get our minds off of my dad's death. Oh, okay, so the dad died. You didn't mention that before. When we came back, my mom was dead on the floor outside by the laundry. The trail of blood led to the forest. We saw a wolf pack off in the darkness, with his face soaked in blood. When night came, my uncle was outside to guard the house with my big brother, when suddenly they saw something in the dark and ran after it with guns. I heard shots, swears, and screams. I could see my big bro run from the forest, and when out of nowhere, something big grabbed his leg and pulled him back in. One last scream could be heard. A few minutes passed, and I could see a deer in the clearing of the forest. It looked at me. After a minute, it got up on its hind legs and started running. Towards the side of the house at a freakishly fast pace. Fucking chair, man. I could now hear an animal I've never heard of in my life breaking down the front door. Something with hoofs was going up the stairs at a fast speed. I hid under my covers, and it stopped when it got to my door. It was like it was never there. Some time passed, and I could hear my big bro's voice call out to me. I went to the door to hear better. There was breathing, a breathing sound of a beast. This was no animal nor human. I hid under my blankets again. I could look through a hole a minute later. What? I could look through a hole in your door? What the hell? This is a goofy one. I could look through a hole a minute later, and a monster barely fitting in my room broke in with no effort. That made no sense with that sentence. Okay. It had long white fur and 6 eyes. It went through my closet, looked under my bed, and went off. After an hour, I got the courage to stop hiding. Right over my head, I could hear its breathing again. It never went away. It wanted to trick me, to play with my fear. One last scream was heard that night. Okay, I didn't hate it, but I didn't really love it. There were some things that were totally thrown off, and there were some sentences that really needed to be changed or updated, you know. Edited. It's a deer bra. Hey, maybe. Hey, Zach, it's Brandon. Dead Shock Studios. Ah, you changed your channel name again, or you started a new one again, huh? Why you keep changing your channel, Brandon? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But welcome anyways. We just got done reading a short story here. Let's see here. And I'm uploading the video that I just finished about, I want to say about 45 minutes ago. I had to render it, and now I'm uploading it to YouTube. It's a 3-part story called Carter's, the Dog Man at Carter's Lake. It's a fabulous story, very brutal. Waylon Timlick, how are you? So your old account got deleted? How does that happen? How does an account get deleted? Oh, a school account. Okay. Gotcha. Well, enough of those school accounts. What were you thinking? So now you have this. Mr. Bioshock himself in the house. So yeah, it's ad suitability is good. Waiting for the copyright to come back to say it's all good in the hood, and then it will upload for June 16th is part 1. Yes, June 16th is part 1 of the Dogman series. It's going to be fantastic, just like my other series that I had worked on previously. One was called Cabin Fever, and the other one is called A Story Hunter Ironwood, which the three videos already came out for that, but he's writing additional stories, or not additional stories, but he's making continuation stories where it left off. So it might be like a total of 6 videos for that story. Unless he keeps going with it, you never know. He might just keep going with it, but honestly, I think 6 videos is plenty. Thank you for the story, although it was lame. Yeah, Kelly, it was a lame story. I was like, what the hell? A deer, then an owl, then it's some white furred monster with 6 eyes looking through a hole. It was just weird. Yeah, it was lame. But hey, at least I saved you a lame. At least I saved the lame story for a live stream and not in the actual video, right? Oh yeah, I'm kind of glad that happened, because if I would have put that on a video, I'd be like kicking myself in the butt. You never know. You never know. You think something's good, people comment that it's a great story, and then you read it for yourself, and you're like, "This sucks," or in the words of Butthead, "This sucks." Yeah. You don't know if you're Mr. BioShock anymore, huh? Oh, that would be a cool name, actually, for a channel. Mr. BioShock? I don't think that's been taken. More Mr. Dead Space. Mr. BioShock actually sounds cooler, even though Dead Space is probably a cooler game. But Mr. BioShock is definitely a cooler name for a channel, if you're not judging it based off the actual games itself, just on the name alone. If you haven't played that, you should check it out. Dead Space is amazing. I have not played it yet. I have not. No, I haven't. I have Days Gone and Phasmophobia, or whatever that thing's called, but I haven't hit up in Tropic Society to do a live stream gameplay with that in a while. I actually haven't heard from him in a while. I think it's been a couple of weeks since we text each other. Yes, we have each other's phone numbers. One last scream. Ah! Oops, wrong scream. That's the only last good scream, right? Am I right? Mm-hmm. Meg says, I wish I could write stories, but I don't have the patience. I'm not a horrible writer, but I'm very straight to the point when I write stuff, so I tend to have short stories when I have this great idea to have a long story, but when it's all said and done, it's not a long story. It's like maybe 14 minutes long after I edit all my bloopers and stuff. I don't know. I just can't seem to like keep it going like the Energizer Bunny with the keyboard here. I like writing. I have some really great ideas. Actually, a lot of the ideas in some of my stories where people write stuff for me, a lot of those ideas come from me, but I just can't put them on paper to like fluff it out to make it a long, interesting video. Mr. BioShock is a good name, but I was focused on that. I would be bored so quickly. It's Goosebumps. Exactly. Well, I mean, Mr. BioShock could just be your channel name. It doesn't mean you have to only talk about BioShock. Like, that could just be the name of your video, and you could, like, have a cool avatar where it kind of looks like the BioShock guy, but kind of change the colors and make it kind of look like you. Doesn't mean it has to be about BioShock. Look at mine, Zach Baby TV. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. I do horror stories and stuff like that. But it was the channel name like years before I started doing narration, so I was like, I don't know if I should change it at this point. Thought about changing it to like the Dark Forest. I actually did one time. I think I changed the channel name for like 24 hours, and then I was like, no, I don't know. I'm going to have to redo, like, all my frickin' t-shirt merchandise, all my mugs, all my stickers. I'm just like, and like, I already have, like, a direct link with the custom URL saying Zach Baby TV, PayPal, everything's connected with Zach Baby TV. I would have to change everything if I even can. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to keep Zach Baby TV. It is what it is. Oh well. Oh well. Alright. That's too hot in here. I'm taking off the shirt. Same, I can't fluff words. Yeah, that was my problem writing papers in college. They wanted a damn word count, and I could never make that word count. I could get... Sometimes I do. If it was like an interesting topic, like about movies or something, I could definitely make the word count. Then maybe it's the studios that's throwing it off. Because I don't know what the studios means for the channel. Maybe Mr. Deadshock. Mr. Deadshock. I don't know. Mr. Bioshock just sounds super cool. That's just my opinion, though. I think Mr. Bioshock sounds sick. But I'm not sure like where you're taking your channel. But I mean, the name itself is killer. So what else is up with you guys? It's Hump Day. Ordering a pizza tonight. Gonna watch some Netflix or something. I'm alone in the house, outside of my cat, which has left the room. I guess he got bored of me and left. He's probably hiding downstairs somewhere. Alright, Brandon, enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks for swinging by. Enjoy your dinner and have a good night. Man, this frickin' video's taking a while to fully finish its check marks of stuff. There's a checklist here when you're uploading videos that it has to go through. Ad suitability, copyright, blah, blah, blah. It's taking a while, guys. It's taking a while. Stupid chair. I tell you. I tell you. Alan Garvey. Hey, Zach. How's it going, man? Hey, Alan. How are you? Hopefully you're having a fantastic night. Still checking. Okay. Boy, that background music seems like it's really loud. Trying to edit that a little bit here for you. Still sounds like it's coming out pretty loud. Who knows? What I'm actually thinking about doing is actually doing a live stream and just putting up my playlist of stories. Just so you guys could sit there and listen to it for like hours and hours and hours. Thought about doing that. Sounds pretty cool, huh? Maybe I'll do that soon. Maybe I'll do that tonight. Is there a particular playlist you guys would like to listen to on a live stream? We have different ones here. Let's see what we got here. Robert Lyons, how are you, Robert? Welcome to the Dark Forest. How are you? So we got we got Bigfoot Tales, Skinwalker Tales, Wendigo Tales, Zombie Tales, alien UFO tales, Dogman tales, scary campfire tales, and haunted tales. Is there a particular playlist that you guys would like to listen to? Meg says she loves the long ones. Don't they all? I bet you do, Meg. I bet you do. Well, each of these playlists, all the different videos, they're all different length. Some of them are long stories, some are medium. Not all of them are short, or not a lot of them, per se, are short. I try to keep my videos at least around 20 minutes or more. As far as the length of the video for stories, if I come across 2 or 3 cool stories that are kind of short, I'll throw them together and make like a compilation video, like Deep Woods or 3 or 4 Wendigo horror stories or something like that. That way, it'll last a little longer for you. All right, Robert Lyons says Wendigo tales. Meg says scary campfire tales. Interesting, interesting. Well, so far they are equal in the votes, so I don't know who's going to win here. Let's see. Because once I put those stories on, I'm going to be gone with the wind and won't be able to talk to you. Because the video will be playing with the stories, and that'll be kind of confusing to listen to a story and hear me in the background going, "Hey, y'all!" Yeah. But that way I could keep things rocking, get the stories out here for you guys to listen to and whatnot. I could actually go grab something to drink downstairs, come back up, mix and match, mix it up a little bit. Plus, we still got a couple hours to spare before tonight's stories come out. Or story, I'm sorry. It's actually one Deepwood story. I thought it was multiple stories, but when I opened it up, it's actually one long, complete story. It's a good one, too. Makes you think twice before going camping. For sure. Absolutely. Even though I love camping myself, but I actually want to do some camping in the backyard now that I have a yard. The fire pit is still in the works. I still have to wait for my buddy to come over to help me, because this guy can build anything and fix anything. So he wants to go to Home Depot with me and give me a couple different options of how we could finish building the chair, because right now I kind of just got the foundation of it, but I need to raise it so it's more comfortable to sit in, so it's not so close to the ground. But that's easy. That's just some liquid nails, concrete glue, basically, from a frickin' caulk gun, and then adding 6 more cinder blocks on top of those so I could have a higher butt to sit on for the chair. And as far as the armrests go, I think they're going to be long rocks that we could liquid nail down to the concrete blocks where the chair is, basically, the foundation. In the back part and the butt part might be made out of wood. We're going to have to shape it, spray paint it, foam it or concrete it, give it some extra layers for protection for the weather and the elements and everything. Because I want this chair to last. I don't want it to start breaking apart after a couple of years. I know people that have made this chair out of foam, and it doesn't last that long. So I want my chair to last for years and years and years and years. I want it permanent. I don't want it... Unless you got a jackhammer and you destroy it, it's not going anywhere. So I'm kind of doing it the right way. It's going to cost a little more. It's going to be a little bit more work. But it's going to be awesome. So, without further ado, I think I'm going to pop on some scary campfire stories. Since Meg J is a channel member and she randomly donates to the Dark Forest, she's got an upper hand on you, Robert. No offense. So I'm going to pop that on. It'll probably last for a couple of hours or so, and then we'll call it a night. Because I don't want it to interrupt tonight's stories that's coming out at 9 o'clock. Because every night, aside from Sunday, A new video comes out Monday through Saturday. And I don't want you guys to forget about tonight at 9 o'clock, so I can't have the live stream going past 9. Gotta cut it short, or cut it early, per se. Oh, Robert Lyons. You silly Billy. Yeah, so I guess, I mean, you guys are gonna have to sit through the commercials too, because I'm not gonna be in front of the computer screen the whole time, and I can't like go past all the commercials 24/7. You know, gotta let them rain through their process. So let's go. Let's go. Shorts, Bigfoot, Skinwalkers. All right, Robert, Meg, Alan, Deadshock, Kelly, everybody else. We had some fun. Now let's get into the spooky tales. In 3, 2, 1. I try, Meg. I try to be dope. When did you get the sexy elf? I got her in 2014. I put a ring on it in 2016. Look at those legs, huh, Chris? Nice. All right. Enjoy the stories. Is it loud enough, though, guys? Is the stories loud enough before I step away from the computer to go down to my kitchen, to the fridge, to grab something to drink? Do I need to turn the volume up?
Skinwalker. My father told me a story once. I'll never forget it, for a few reasons. I think it's the first story he ever told me as a child.
I'm going to turn it up here a little bit.
It's also a story of how my grandfather died. But honestly, that isn't the reason. You hear stories on TV, or sometimes you overhear something in a public place. People talk about ghosts and aliens, and you think to yourself,
how about that? Is that better?
Real. They're making it up, or they've mistaken, or they're just crazy, or something like that. You just can't believe it. Until something happens. Something that brings it all together, connects the dots in a way.
That's as loud as I could actually make it, guys. I have it all the way up.
Maybe it happened to you. Maybe you hear
hopefully
the same
that works
story
for you. Does that work for you guys?
again,
Now take it, some of these stories are pretty
It
old.
doesn't take long for the
You'll
world
notice
to
my
become a
skill
lot
is
bigger
not
than
up to
you
par
thought
as it is
was.
now.
As I said, this is a story my father told me.
I laugh at
But
that
I
because I
never
started with a
believed it,
really cheap
Even
microphone.
though he swore up and down it was true.
And I wasn't that great when I first started out.
It
so
wasn't until I started
you'll
clicking
notice the
around
difference
the
between
internet
which ones are
I
like
started
really
to
old
believe.
stories compared to the newer stuff.
I started to hear other stories just like
This
the
one is
my
pretty.
father
This
had
one's
told
like
me.
3 or 4 years old. Yeah.
It didn't take me long.
All right,
to
sounds
believe
good. All right,
the
let me
rape.
run downstairs and grab myself something to drink
That's
because
not
I'm
what
thirsty.
my father called it, of course. He's never used the internet in his life. He wouldn't know what the consensus has taken to naming it. When he chose to call it something other than it or that thing. He called it Skinwalker after an old Navajo tale his grandfather told him. But I'll tell you the story the way he told it to me. We were out hunting one night, he'd tell me. Coyotes. We'd kill them for $50 a skin. They lived in a dairy farm in Ohio. They'd kill calves sometimes. We'd do it every night because we needed the money. Sometimes, while we were out, we'd come on a deer and kill it. Our landlord didn't mind, and it could feed our family for a few nights and save us some money. Anyways, we were done making our rounds and headed home, walking, 'cause we didn't have a car and some four-wheeler back then. We cut through the woods. That's when we came up on it. Blood. Everywhere. Splattered on the trees, in the grass, in the creek, everywhere. At first, we figured it was a pack of coyotes. We'd seen it sometimes. They can't scavenge and start hunting deer or cattle. The worst was when they bred with feral dogs. But this wasn't like that. See, when a pack of dogs or wolves or coyotes attack something, they do it right. They'll pick it off. They'll pick off the one that's weakest or sick or old or just small. They'll hunt it, draw it in a corner someplace it can't get out of, and they'll run it right into the biggest one, the alpha. And that deer will never see that alpha. It might hear it, but it won't see it. It'll just notice that its throat is gone, and then it'll drop dead. It's quick, it's clean. That's not what happened here. Something had run up on a den of deer. Coyotes won't attack a den, wolves either, because they'll get too much of a fight. There were 3, I think. 3 bodies. Just torn apart. You'd see a head here, a leg there, a torso there. Predators don't do that. They don't leave behind scraps. What had done this hadn't done it for food. It had done it for fun. But we didn't know that. We saw a bunch of carcasses and we thought it was something we gotta take care of. I remember my dad telling me to go home. He thought it was just a pack of feral dogs. But I wasn't leaving him, and I damn sure wasn't walking through 2 miles of woods alone with nothing but a .22 and a pocket knife. He was only 13 at the time, so a .22 rifle was about the only gun he could reliably use. Dad had the shotgun, and I wasn't going anywhere without it. It took me a while to convince him, but finally we began tracking whatever did that. It wasn't hard either. We just followed the blood. Either that thing bled the deer before it got away, or it dragged one for a mile. I don't know. I know that I've never seen my dad scared before that night. We started hearing noises. I've been in a lot of woods in my life. I've been all over the world. And I ain't never heard noises like I heard that night. I heard things screaming. I've heard deer and fox and rabbits and raccoons and birds just scared. Keep in mind, this is maybe 12 or 1 o'clock. Kept the fox and some birds. Nothing was supposed to even be awake. But they weren't just awake. They were moving. I saw flocks of birds that night fly straight in the trees just trying to get out of there. We came up on a pack of coyotes, nearly shot a couple thinking that they were looking for us. But then we saw they were running towards us. They ran right past us. Didn't even notice. Then some deer did the same. Then some rabbits, squirrels, foxes, even a couple wild hogs. These things were supposed to be eating each other, and the only thing they're scared about was getting out of there. We should have put it together that maybe whatever we were tracking, it wasn't something we were supposed to see, and it wasn't something we could kill. I don't know why we didn't just go home. I guess we were curious. I think that was my dad's nature, to go forward into trouble, to fight. And knowing what I knew about what my father did during the war, my nature was to stay close to him. We finally get up to an open valley. It was normally a soy field, but it wasn't in season, so it was just flat dirt. We saw the tracks. Then, a lot of animals fleeing in the forest had paved over the land. But where that deer blood was, Nothing has taken a large single step, like they were leaving it for us to find. The tracks were shallow. Whatever it was couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds, but that didn't mean much. A bobcat weighs 40 pounds wet nearly tore out my damn throat once. All that means is that it's quick and hard to hit. So we follow the tracks, and it doesn't take us long to find where it is. There's this old schoolhouse that sits on top of a hill. Half of it had been ripped out by a tornado, but nobody lived there. Not for a long time. We caught homeless people in there sometimes, or druggies, looking for a safe place to shoot up. We figured maybe that was it. Maybe it was some sick kid riding high. But we didn't think that for too long. We get within 50 yards and we hear this noise. A screeching kind of sound. It was sort of made up of two different sounds. One was a high-pitched screech. Other was a low-pitched growl. It was making both at the same time. We get within 20 yards and we hear this sound. I could remember thinking that it sounded like paper being torn apart while someone was swinging water in a bucket back and forth. Dad looks at me, kneels down, and whispers, "I gotta stay behind him, 'cause we're about to corner him. Any animal will fight when it's cornered, especially when it's a predator. But we could tell by its tracks that it's just one." He tells me it's probably a single feral dog, probably rabid. The plan is to sneak up on it while it's eating, shoot it, and then keep shooting until it doesn't move anymore. Then slit its throat. If it gets to Dad, my job is to shoot it or stab it to get it off him. So he walks up, and I'm right behind him, just a tad to his side so I can see what it is. I wish to this day I hadn't. It was leaning over a carcass, tears off its flesh and throws what it didn't want nibbles aside. There's blood all over the brick, glistening in the moonlight. It's pale white, human-looking, but not quite human. It had arms and legs like a human, but it sat like a monkey hunched over. Its hands weren't normal. It had long fingernails with claws at the end. So we see that, and my dad hesitates. He wasn't about to fire on a person, so he clears his throat to try to get it to turn around. I swear to God, all those noises just ceased. I ain't never heard true silence before that, and not after it, but for 2 seconds, nothing made any noise, which made it all the louder when it turned around, made this shrill cry and jumped on Dad. He got a shot off. I think he missed. If he hit the thing, it didn't mind. But it was on him, tearing parts of him off. I start shooting it with my .22 point blank, but it barely bled the thing. I got off 5 rounds and then I started hitting it with the gun butt, but it wasn't budging. It didn't even register that I was there. It clawed my dad, taking off bits of his flesh. It started on his torso, ripping off his skin, his tit, and then it moved up. It tore off his throat. It tore off his nose, his eyes. It scalped him. Then it started digging in and ripping off the bottom half of his jaw, the little bones and that tube in your neck, then his ribs. Don't exactly remember what happened, but somehow my dad's knife ends up in the thing's shoulder and my dad ends up on my back. I'm running, and by God, I'm running faster than I've ever run before or after. And it's following me. I end up back in the woods, opposite the ones we had been in. I'm heading towards my landlord's house, 'cause it's half a mile away. I can hear the thing screeching and moaning. I hear the tree branches crack and getting thrown around. It sounds like someone's taking an axe to every single tree I pass. It's cracking so loud and often, but I ain't just looking back. Finally, I trip into gravel. I look up and there's my landlord and a bunch of his buddies drinking around a campfire. I scream and I cry, and they come over. I'm telling them to call an ambulance, and he looks at me and I'll never forget what he said. "What is that on your back?" he asked me. Just as he said it, he saw one of those god-awful flannel shirts my dad wore everywhere. It was what was left of my dad. Most of his head, his torso, but nothing after the waist. Suddenly, we hear it screeching. He grabs me. My dad gets thrown to the ground. I'm fighting him, crying, because I think he could still save him somehow. My dad had been gone well before I ever picked him up. He has to pick me up and throw me inside before I come with him. He and his buddies were all inside, and they're locking doors and getting their guns. The landlord's asking me what happened. What happened? But I just don't know what to tell him. He pieced enough of it together to understand that there was something dangerous there. All the lights in the house are on, and someone calls the cops. They'll be there, but in 15 minutes. We look outside and see it walk in front of the fire they'd made. Don't know what it is. One of them says it looks like an ape. Suddenly, something goes through the window. We shoot at it, but it ain't the thing. It's my landlord's dog. Just the body, though, not his head or legs. We start pushing things in front of the doors and windows when we hear something in the garage. I remember one of his friends saying that the doors were open. We hear metal and glass just getting ripped apart. We put a couch and a TV in front of the door to the garage. It banged around some more, but then it got quiet. Not silent, like it was before. We could hear it move around some, and the guys were also talking, making sure the guns were ready. Someone handed me a pistol. No sooner did I clock the hammer back when we heard something shatter upstairs. Then we heard it screech again, except now it was louder, and it didn't echo and fade out, because it was inside. We all rushed to the one door leading upstairs, and we got to it just as the thing did. It opened just a little bit, and 4 or 5 men just slammed into it. It got its hand through. Someone with a shotgun took care of that, put the barrel right up to its wrist and pulled the trigger. Cuts its hand off clean. That only pissed it off, though. It started pushing on the door, clawing. We were on one side pushing as best as we could, and it was on the other doing the same. That wood just wasn't going to hold, so someone tells us to keep our heads down. Suddenly the top of the door is just gone. My ears are ringing and there's splinters everywhere. 2 or 3 of them are just unloading on the top of the door. I don't really know where it went after that. The police got there. I was still glued to that door. What was left of it. The sun was up before they got me off it. They put me in the hospital for a while. A lot of people talked to me, but I didn't talk back. Not for a long, long time. When I got home, I got a job from the landlord working on the farm. We didn't talk much about the thing, but I signed up for the army when I was 19, and he sat me down to drink some scotch as I set off. I asked him right away what the police told him, the story that went off of that it was a wild animal, probably a wolf, or maybe a bear that had migrated north. I asked him how they could say that when they had his hand. He looked at me stunned. He tells me that the hand never made it back to the station. The cop who had it in his car wrecked, drove into a tree, died on impact. The hand was never found, probably taken away by an animal. The cops, when they would acknowledge the hand existed at all, said it was simply just a paw of a bear or looked like a human's hand. I never talked to the landlord again. He went missing when I was in basic. The cops never found him. They said he owed some people some money and just ran away. But I don't think it's that simple. I never went back to those woods. I wouldn't even if I had the whole goddamn army at my back. But that was a lie. When my mother died, I don't think my father felt he had anything left. Might as well settle old scores. He went to those woods. He never came back. The FBI was called. They put up a show for everyone involved, but I know they weren't really looking. I had to get one of them drunk and slip him a few 50s before he finally told me that they had a few calls about these woods every year, about someone up and vanishing. That's all he wanted to tell me. Before he got up and left with the rest of his team, he wrote, "The Rake," onto a napkin. I don't know what it meant until I searched for it on the internet. Honestly, I would have rather not known.
I always liked to have a more secluded lifestyle. Reclusive, even. It's not that I have social anxiety or anything. I guess I'm just not a people person. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate other people, but I'd rather not be around them. I like solitude and quietness. When an acquaintance offered to rent me his family's mountain cabin for a few months, I agreed almost instantly. The truth is, I'd been looking for an opportunity like this for a while now. Just a few months, out in the middle of nowhere to work on my poetry completely undisturbed. Unfortunately, I'd never found anything that fit my rather tight budget. The cabin itself was located in a remote area of the Alps. There were some tourist spots nearby, but nothing within walking distance. The place was ideal for someone who wanted to be entirely on their own. It sounded absolutely perfect. I arrived at the cabin about a month ago. It was beautiful. I loved it the moment I set foot inside. While I settled in, I started a small fire to heat up the place. For the first couple days, I had a hard time writing anything worthwhile. All the lines I came up with didn't feel right. Instead of brooding over my work, I decided to explore the outside area. The snow-covered plains, the mountains, and the many forests painted a beautiful panorama. Out here, things were different, untouched. I wandered around for hours, trying to absorb as much of nature's beauty as I possibly could. Work went well after this little trip outside. Nature had always been one of my prime inspirations. From that day onward, I'd often spend a good part of the day outside, going on extensive walks. Only when the sun started to set did I actually sit down and work on my poetry. Many times I discovered the tracks of animals outside. Some were small, most likely left by rabbits. Others were bigger, hinting at deer. I rarely stumbled upon signs of other humans. There were a few lonely tracks here and there. They were most likely left by hikers or mountain climbers passing through the area. My acquaintance was right. I was completely alone out here. That was until 2 weeks ago. I set out one day for another walk when I stumbled upon many new tracks. They were clearly human, but it had to be a whole group. Their tracks were chaotic, going here and there as if they were stumbling into one another. I frowned when I saw them, and hoped that they were already gone and on their way. As so often, luck wasn't on my side. It was a day later that I found more of the same tracks. They were as chaotic as before, but now they were much closer. Whoever they were, they seemed to linger around the area. Maybe they were camping out here for some reason. Once more, I frowned. I went out here to get inspired, not to see their stupid tracks all over the place. Worst of all, they didn't seem to care about nature at all. They had almost left a clear path behind on their way through the woods. There were markings on some of the trees, and branches and twigs littered their path. For the next couple of days, I found more and more signs of this ominous group. It was a bit strange, though, that I never saw any of them. I shrugged it off and decided it was best to ignore them. When the noises started, though, things took a turn for the worse. When you live in a city, noises are a normal part of life. You know that it's your neighbor or kids playing outside. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, it was an entirely different story. It was about 11 in the evening when the noises started. I sat at my desk with a mug of hot tea working on my latest poem. Suddenly I heard something outside. It was distant, but I could clearly make out voices outside. I put my pen down and went to one of the windows. I racked it and listened, but I couldn't understand a word. They were yelling and shouting. What the hell were they up to? For a moment, I thought about yelling out into the night, but then I decided it was better to lay low. The noise went on for a while longer before it thankfully died down. The next day, I realized that the group hadn't been out in the woods alone as I'd thought. No. The moment I stepped outside, I saw the many chaotic tracks right in front and all around the cabin. I couldn't help but be creeped out. Why had they come here? Had they watched me? A bit unnerved, I scanned the area in the woods around the cabin. Was someone nearby right now? I quickly went back inside. I didn't go for a walk that day. For the first time since I'd arrived, I realized that I was completely isolated. There was no one nearby at all. For a moment, I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That I found a bunch of tracks outside in front of the cabin? Yeah, right. They'd tell me to call them again if something actually happened. No way they'd come up here because of a few random tracks. I was antsy all day, but when the sun set, I started to get more and more anxious. I tried to work, but the thought of someone watching the cabin made it almost impossible. Instead, I paced through the cabin, eyeing the area outside from various windows. I saw nothing. It was late in the evening when I heard the noise again. Once more, I cracked the window and listened. There were steps outside, many of them as if the group was rushing through the snow. They were so close to the cabin. A few times I saw someone move outside, but it was too far away, hidden by the darkness of the night. As I listened to the yells and shouts, it almost felt as if they were circling the cabin. Were they trying to find a way inside? I rushed to the front door, making sure it was locked, and then checked all the windows. During all this time, the frantic movement and the shouting outside continued. Finally, I'd had it, and I called the cops. I told them exactly what was going on and that I was scared they might break into the cabin. It was about half an hour later that I saw the distant headlights of the police car. As soon as the car got closer, the shouting stopped, and the footsteps turned into nothing more than a faint echo. The annoyance of the two police officers was evident as soon as I opened the door. I could imagine they weren't all too happy to be out here in the middle of the night. I invited them inside and poured each of them a cup of tea. They didn't touch it at all. I carefully explained to them what had happened. The two of them listened, and I could soon see that their annoyance shifted to concern. After I'd finished, I led them outside, and with their flashlights, they scanned the area. There were so many tracks here by now. It was almost as if all the snow around the cabin had been flattened. I could hear one of them grumbling something about damned tourists before they told me they'd have a look around the area. I thanked them multiple times and returned back inside. It was an hour or so later that the two of them returned. They told me they'd found nothing but more of the same tracks. They led in circles through the forest, but there was no hint of the group I described. It was most likely a bunch of tourists trying to cause a bit of trouble. That type of thing had happened before. Most likely some college kids who were out here drinking and having a bit too much fun. Once someone calls the police, though, they know it's time to knock it off. They told me this was most likely the end of it. The group was probably on their way and wouldn't disturb me anymore. Before they left, one of them handed me his number and told me to give him a ring should they be back. Once again, I thanked them, but somehow their words didn't feel too reassuring. Somehow, I felt as if they were just trying to convince me nothing was wrong, so they could finally get out of here. I was up for hours after they'd left. Only when morning came did I feel comfortable enough to go to sleep. When I got up, I thought about packing my things and leaving. Then I told myself that the stay here had been something I'd looked forward to for years. Should I really let a bunch of stupid college kids ruin it for me? No. I decided to stay. By now, I wish I'd left. I really wish I had. For the whole day, I went from window to window watching the woods outside. Eventually, I ventured out myself to have a look around the cabin. Who knows, maybe they were hiding nearby. The only thing I found was the tracks from last night. By now, they were almost completely buried under the new snow. I couldn't even think of my work anymore. My mind was entirely absorbed watching the area outside. As day turned into night, I hoped that the police had been right. Time passed, and soon midnight arrived without any noise. The police must have scared them off. I'd finally calmed down and was about to heat up some tea when I heard something. It was the sound of footsteps in the snow. There were so many of them, as if dozens of people were out there. How big was this damned group? I was about to call the police when something heavy hit the cabin. What the hell was going on out there? What were these assholes doing? I rushed to one of the windows, but only caught a glimpse of someone staggering off into the darkness. I waited to see if they'd be back, but soon there was another loud bang from the other side of the cabin. The shouts started again, or better, the screams. They sounded different now. Before, they had seemed excited, but now they sounded agitated, almost terrified. For a moment, I stood there, shivering. What the hell was going on out there? Once more, I heard loud screams. This time, it was almost as if someone was calling for help. Were they trying to trick me? I went to the window and saw something again. People were moving outside, but I couldn't see them clearly. Their movement looked strange, almost as if they were stumbling through the snow. Shit. I couldn't see a thing in the darkness. Finally, I opened the window and called out to whoever was out there. What's going on? You all right out there? I broke up as the source of the noise revealed itself and started moving towards me. The phone slipped from my hands and I stumbled backward. What was out there was indeed a group of people, or something resembling one. There were too many legs, too many arms. It was a twisting, writhing mess of human limbs and bodies all entangled into one another. For a moment, I saw stitches all over it, fusing bodies and limbs together into one giant abomination. Then I saw the faces. Theirs were blind, sewed shut, and their mouths wide open. Once more they started screaming at me. No, those had never been screams of excitement. Those were screams of pure terror. I was on the ground, staring at the window in front of me in sheer disbelief. Moments later, the thing, crashed against the wall of the cabin. A rain of glass exploded over me, and I saw dozens of arms reaching out for me. No! Leave me the fuck alone! I screamed as I frantically crawled backward. All the thing's heads turned right into my direction. Again, the thing pressed itself against the small window opening. I saw hands clinging to the window frame and the wall as the creature tried to push itself inside. The mouths opened once more, screaming in terror again, and for the first time I understood their words. I could only watch as the thing continued its struggle more and more. Arms reached inside, pushing, twisting, ripping skin and flesh apart as the thing desperately tried to get inside. It suddenly stopped moving. Moments later, it let out another blood-curdling scream before it rushed off into the darkness. I don't know how long I sat on the floor. I was so utterly terrified that I just couldn't move. When I finally got to my feet, my legs were weak and shaky. I'd barely taken a few steps before they gave way. What the fuck had this thing been? How the hell can something like that even exist? For long moments, I lay on the floor, shaking as the images of the abomination haunted my mind again and again. And it screams. Oh, dear God, what the hell was this? When I got up, I was nervous and restless. I had to walk through the cabin to keep the panic at bay. Every once in a while, I scanned the windows for any signs of the creature, but it was gone. If for good, I couldn't tell. After a while, I started questioning myself. Could this even be real? Maybe I was suffering from cabin fever or whatever people out here get. What if my paranoia had conjured up this twisted creature? As I turned around to the window, though, I saw the proof right there. The pieces of glass on the floor, the broken window, and the scratches all over the cabin wall. At this point, I remembered my phone. I looked around in confusion before I saw it, right below the window. I took a step towards it, but then froze. What if that thing was still around? No, it had run off, I told myself. Once more, I anxiously listened for noises outside. All was quiet. I rushed forward, closed my hands around the phone, and almost threw myself back. "Oh, thank God," I said out loud when I saw it was still working. It was right at this time that I heard the sound of distant steps again. I dialed the cops right away and told them that something out here was after me. I must have sounded like a total nutcase. They asked me if it was those college kids again. Instead of answering, I pleaded with them to come out here and save me. They told me to calm down and to stay indoors and that they'd be here as quick as possible. Waiting was pure torture. I listened to every sound. Even the snow falling from the roof was enough to send another surge of panic into my brain. I still couldn't stand still. Once more, I paced through the cabin. Where the hell were they? What's taking them so long? God damn it! When I checked my phone, I saw that it hadn't even been half an hour yet, but to me, it had felt like an eternity. Shit. Can't they hurry it up? What if that thing comes back? Those steps outside, they were getting closer. They weren't those of multiple legs. They weren't frantic and chaotic. No. They were slow and deliberate. Oh, please tell me it's the police. Please. Suddenly, I heard something on the wall of the cabin again. It was as if something metallic was slowly scratched along the wall outside. I almost flipped out when I heard it. This was not normal. I cowered in fear at the sound and closed my eyes. Make it go away. Please make this thing go away. I was ripped from my terror by a knock on one of those intact windows at the cabin. The police. They finally made it. When I turned towards the window, though, the blood froze in my veins. Two huge yellow eyes were staring at me, and long bony fingers were still knocking against the glass. This was no policeman. This was no human. It was a giant, hulking figure that leaned down to look into the cabin. When I saw its face, I was reminded of the masks of plague doctors. But it was no mask. It was a grown-together mess of skin, flesh, and bone. For a moment, the creature's head moved away, and I saw that it was holding something long and thin in its hand. Was that a giant needle? Suddenly, I heard a car driving up to the cabin. In an instant, the giant figure crooked its head at the source of the noise, and with heavy steps, it walked into the direction of the police car. Moments later, the frantic sway of headlights reached the front windows of the cabin. I stumbled forward as I heard the screams of the two police officers. Gunshots cut through the night, followed by the crunching of metal as the giant figure peeled the two men from the car. In horror, I watched as it scooped them up in his hand. I waited for it to crush them, but instead, it smiled and brought the needle to its mouth. Moments later, it pushed it into the flesh of the first man. When the screams of agony and terror reached my ears, the figure started to giggle. It was a high-pitched, distorted sound. For a moment, the terrible face turned and smiled towards me. Then it quickly walked off into the woods, sewing the two men in its grasp to one another. This was an hour ago. Since then, I started writing this all out, to keep myself from giving in to utter despair. This was supposed to be a little getaway to work on my poetry, but it had turned into an absolute nightmare. Countless times I thought to make a run for it, but that thing is still out there. I can still hear its steps as it circles the cabin. There's still the screams of the two police officers. I know that this damned monstrosity is teasing me, preying on me, watching me. The thing is still long.
Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe below for more ghoulish tales.
Real cowboys customize and save with Liberty Mutual.
Hey, Tex, can someone else get a turn?
Hello, and welcome to Zach Baby TV. Tonight, we have Somber Reeds joining us around our campfire. If you like his narration, subscribe to his channel. His information will be in the description box down below. Now, without further ado, let's get into these ghoulish tales. The Forest of Three. That is what it's called. Nobody knows who named it, or when. In fact, this secluded area is not labeled on maps. It has no official name, only the name given to it by the townsfolk who live on its edge, the Forest of Three. Perhaps it is named after the three tall redwoods that grow in its heart. Three towering giants lifted their heads far above the tree line. They stand in a circle with overgrown branches extended into each other's foliage, as if linking arms. When the wind howls, one can see them sway. Their powerful roots supply the giant forces needed to prevent them from falling. Viewed from the correct angle, it could appear as if they are attempting to dance, to uproot themselves and skip in a circle with hands joined. The three redwoods have been left untouched for decades. Although the ancient, well-seasoned wood would surely be profitable for the town's lumber industry, not a single person would ever suggest cutting them down. The redwoods are viewed by the townsfolk as guardians of the forest, as protectors of the town. And a very small town it is. How many inhabitants are there? Nobody knows the exact count, for such details are of little concern. But it could not be more than a few hundred. During the daylight hours, the streets are occasionally filled with lovely sounds of children playing, running, skipping, shouting, and all other manner of things that children are prone to do. However, the town itself is a rather boring place, and not the preferred playground of children. After all, the town sits next to a large forest. What better playground could a child ask for? Thousands of trees to climb, rocks to overturn, creatures and insects to be examined. A child could spend every day exploring the vast expanse of green and never happened upon the same tree twice. Yes, the forest is a perfect place for children. A place for them to explore, to imagine, to learn. The children love the forest greatly. They even sing a nursery rhyme about it, skipping in circles with hands joined. Children will chant, come play in the forest of three, you and I with thee. Oh, such fun we have in store, lurking there forevermore. Where this rhyme comes from, nobody knows. It is possible that the children themselves wrote it, yet upon examination, this theory seems implausible. Forevermore? Thee? Hardly words that a child would understand, let alone include in a song. No, this rhyme speaks of something old, something archaic, something beyond the understanding of children. For many years, life was peaceful in this small town. Nothing noteworthy occurred. There was no newspaper because there was never any news. A simple lumber town with a simple lumber industry, populated by simple people. Everything was as it should be. Nothing was out of place. Then, a child disappears. How long ago was this? Few remember the exact year. Several decades ago, at least. A child who was only concerned in life with sweets and playtime simply vanished. A town meeting was called. One of the other children claimed that they had seen the missing child earlier that day, that the missing child had gone into the forest to play, as usual, and had not come back. A search party was immediately organized and sent into the forest. They searched for hours, until the falling darkness did not permit them to search any longer. We'll search again at first light. Everything will be fine. It's probably just a game. Don't worry so much. The townfolk comforted the children's terrified parents. As soon as the first rays of sunlight crept through the trees, the search party was out again. They covered miles and miles, hardly stopping for rest or food. Yet there was no trace of the missing child. Each day they searched. Each day they came back with sore feet, hungry bellies, and no child. Hope was still there, but it was quickly fading. Each day the search party came back sooner and sooner. Each day, they spent less and less time looking for the missing child before heading back. Eventually, the searches ceased entirely. If one was to examine the town at that time, at first glance it would appear just as it was before. Men chopped wood, stores had good business, school was in session, children still played in the streets and in the forest. Of course, the family and friends of the missing child grieved. But nothing would seem out of the ordinary at first glance. Look closer, and you would see it. The children. They played, they danced, they sang their nursery rhyme. Yet, there was something odd about their games. As they skipped in circles, armed together, chanting their favorite tune, there was a distinct gap where the two children should have been holding hands. Instead, held each other's arms to the side, creating a gap in the circle. A gap that seemed just large enough to make room for one more child. During the rainy season, the children often had to play inside. The school had an ample supply of checkerboards, which were excellent at keeping the children's minds engaged. If one looked closely at the children's playing checkers, you would notice a single lonely child. Whereas all the other children and partners to play checkers with, this child was on their own. Nevertheless, they seemed to be having a good time, making moves for both sides of the board, and even becoming angry when they lost to their imaginary partner. Life in the town continued. The memory of the missing child faded with each year, until the other children scarcely remembered them. Soon, the children matured and had children of their own. The unfortunate unsolved mystery of the child had went missing was slowly forgotten. Until a second child vanished. The adults who remembered the original disappearance were disturbed. The disappearance of another child brought back painful memories. Many of them have been children themselves when the first child went missing, although they remembered very little about that child. Again, a town meeting was called. During the meeting, it surfaced that the child was last seen heading into the forest, eager to play, and again, a search party was formed. This search party fared no better than the one 15 years earlier, although the forest was searched each day for hours, with many miles of land being covered. Not a single trace of the child was ever found. Again, the search party was disbanded, leaving the family to grieve their loss. After a while, the town seemed to return to normal. Daily life resumed its normal course, just as it had so many years before. Yet if you looked closely at the children, you would notice the same curiosities witnessed 15 years before. The children skipped in circles, singing the nursery rhyme that their parents had passed down to them. But again, there was a gap in their group. A void that was only apparent when they danced. This gap appeared to be just a little bit larger than the one before. Perhaps there was more room for the extra two children to join them in their playgroup. During rainy days when the children were stuck indoors playing with worn-out checker sets, there were no longer any lonely children. Every child had a partner to play with. However, laying unnoticed in the corner of the room was the solitary checker set. It had no players. no children to have fun with it. The pieces were scattered across the board as if a game was currently in progress, yet there was nobody using it. Who could say what this meant? Maybe nothing. Children are prone to strange behavior, as any parent knows. A gap in their dancing circle, an unused checkers board. Why should any of these anomalies be any concern? In the end, it did not matter. No adult noticed the slightly unusual behavior of the children after either disappearance. Such was life in the small lumber town. Years continued to pass. Those who were children during the first disappearance became middle-aged. The friends of the second child who disappeared now had children of their own, and life passed by completely normal. Until tonight. For tonight is a very special night. If one were to visit the town center, you would find it bustling with activity. Worried faces, loud arguments, and a weeping family is what you would find. You see, earlier today, a child went into the forest to play and did not return. A town meeting has been called to discuss the best course of action. Many members of the town remember the initial disappearance, which occurred more than 3 decades ago. Some are saying that the disappearances are connected, that 2 disappearances could be a coincidence, but not 3. Some now believe that the forest is haunted, while others call them crazy. Early tomorrow morning, when the sun begins to rise, a search party will set out to find the missing child. Perhaps they will find the child, and perhaps not. Perhaps the child simply became lost while playing in the forest and could not find their way back home. Or perhaps tomorrow, when the other children go outside to play and begin dancing in a circle, chanting their nursery rhyme, they will see a gap just large enough for 3 extra children to join. And so tonight I invite you to visit the Forest of 3. Early tomorrow, the determined search party will undoubtedly break the calm silence, the quiet serenity of the forest. But for the next few hours, all is still. Stroll through the tall, broad redwoods, the thick brush, and moist soil, and trickling creeks. Gaze through the foliage in the night sky to see the bright starlight and thin gray wisps of clouds flowing overhead. Eventually, you will arrive at the heart of the forest. Here stands 3 great redwoods, 100 feet taller and 100 years older than the others in the forest. They stand with their branches interwoven, as if dancing in a circle. The wind howls. The trees begin to sway. Sharp shadows are cast upon the trunks of the great redwoods. The shadows move across the bark, and it appears as if the trees are snarling at you. Sneering at some great joke that you cannot understand. The wind dies. Close your eyes. Listen for it. The soft rustle of the leaves overhead. The quiet trickle of water through streams. The small animals moving through the brush. Now it comes. So very distant, yet so very near. An innocent chorus, carrying a sinister tone. The voice of the Forest of 3. Come play in the Forest of 3. You and I and I with thee. Oh, such fun we have in store, lurking there forevermore.
A few weeks ago, my friends and I decided to go on a camping trip to celebrate the end of the semester, as we have done for the past few years. This time, my buddy Alex suggested that we try a new campsite to mix things up. He said that he'd found a good one that not a lot of people frequent, so there was a good chance we'd have the place to ourselves. All of us were excited to see this new site. There was supposedly even a lake not too far away. As soon as finals finished, we hauled our stuff into the van and took off. The drive was about 4 hours, but the extra time was well worth it once we got to the campgrounds. Alex was right. There was nobody here. Plus, William brought some weed along, so this was shaping out to be a great trip. The parking lot was at the bottom of a large hill. The grounds were in a large and dense forest, and it looked like there were some great hiking trails. I told Alex and William that we'd have to come back here again, and they both agreed. It was a solid 45 minutes before we reached Alex's totally dope campsite at the top of the hill. It was actually pretty great, even if it was a difficult trek through the forest to get here. There was a nice clearing and a pretty good view of some hiking trails. Plus, it was early enough in the summer that the weather wasn't too hot. We set up our tent and went out to get wood for a campfire. It was getting late and we were getting pretty tired already, so Alex promised to show us the lake the next day. The goddamn mosquitoes are everywhere. Alex smacked his shoulder. I can't believe I forgot the bug spray. This is where it gets fuzzy. Maybe it was the pot. It could be the pot. But I swear to God, there was something watching us. Beyond the light of the fire, I could see a dark outline of something standing in the trees. It was too far away to make out much detail, so I wasn't sure if it was a person or an animal. I pointed it out to William and Alex, but they didn't see anything. As the night went on, I noticed that thing was still there, and it hadn't moved. It was really just starting to freak me out. I decided to go tell whoever or whatever this was to fuck off. When I got up and made my way into the trees, the figure was gone. But I definitely heard something walking around. I heard twigs snapping under its feet with each step. Finally, I found it. It was close enough to make out some details this time. Paralyzed with fear, I froze as soon as I saw the creature in front of me. It definitely wasn't human. At first glance, it could have been a deer or some other animal. But as I looked again, its glowing eyes and long limbs that came to the sharp points of razor-like claws were all that I could focus on. I used to camp a lot as a kid, and I was pretty into it for a long time. But I couldn't identify this creature, not even in the slightest. Before I could get a word out, the creature sprinted towards me, pulling itself forward for a few steps before lurching at me on its hind legs. Its claws were outstretched. I turned and ran the other way. I immediately hooked my foot under a log and smacked hard onto the ground. The creature's skeletal hands came within inches of my throat, and everything went black. I woke up the next morning in my sleeping bag. Naturally, my friends didn't believe my story, and though I never forgot about it, I was able to move the occurrence to the back of my mind and just chalk it up to the drugs. After all, when I said it out loud, it did seem ridiculous, but it still shook me. and I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that creature in my nightmares for the rest of my life. The sun was just beginning to set when Alex brought us to the lake. The golden rays reflecting off the gentle water made me feel totally and completely relaxed. As we swam out to the middle of the body of water, I could feel the remaining fear of the creature from the previous night just fade away. Maybe there wasn't anything to worry about. Plus, I'd have a great campfire story for next year. After about 30 minutes in the water, Alex, William, and I began to make our way toward the shore. To my right, water sprayed into my face as Alex splashed around next to me. "Hey man, knock it off." He was on the swim team, so I thought he was just dicking around. But when I turned around to look at him, I saw that he was thrashing around just under the surface, desperately trying to get above the water. It looked like he was drowning. "Something's down there." Alex violently broke the surface of the lake, flailing his arms and gasping for air. Not a second after he said those words, he was yanked down sharply. Mid-breath, his words were garbled by the water rushing into his lungs. William and I both dove down looking for Alex, but we couldn't find him. It was too dark to see anything. It was as if Alex had vanished. "What the fuck was that?" I sputtered. I can only think about the creature I saw the night before. Could it swim? What else was out here? All the color had drained from William's body as he raised a shaking hand, pointing at a dark figure on the shore. Its bright eyes stared into my core as it stood there on its hind legs, its claws sticking out of Alex's chest after dragging him from the lake. Blood ran in long trails down my best friend's torso. I almost threw up right there. There was just no logical way that thing could have dragged a 150-pound star swimmer out from the middle of the lake and down onto the shore within 45 seconds. William and I stayed where we were, treading water as the monster stared us down. There was no way we could escape. Slowly, the creature let go of Alex and stood straight up. God, it had to be 7 or 8 feet tall. Its head leaned forward, eyes unblinking, glowing dimly in the darkness. William and I were stuck where we were. Fear was electrifying every nerve as we knew that all we could do was wait. We were going to die in that lake, ripped apart and dragged under the water. The creature began to circle the lake. It was hunting us. I was sure of it. William and I spun slowly as it moved towards us, not wanting to take our eyes off it for a second. A splash echoed out at the far end of the water as the creature dove towards us. William and I swam faster than anyone should have been able to do. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, and miraculously, I found myself dragging my body onto the sand and pulling myself to my feet. I ran to the campsite and hurriedly grabbed Alex's bag, hoping the car keys were inside. Fear pushed me through the trees as I sprinted past the tent and on the way to the bottom of the hill. William was right behind me until I heard him cry out in pain before smacking into the dirt. Oh shit. I felt like I was running forever. My lungs burned and my throat was raw with each breath. Though it was out of my control, my legs were forced to slow down due to exhaustion. Every so often, the snapping of the twigs and pounding footsteps behind me propelled me down the hill. Finally, I reached the car. I dumped the contents of the backpack onto the pavement, scooping up the keys and his cell phone. My trembling fingers fumbled the keys before I was able to cram them into the ignition and floor it out of there. Weeks have passed since that camping trip, and I still can't process what happened. As soon as I was far enough from the campsite, I used Alex's phone to call the police and report an animal attack. A group of officers went to the campgrounds, where they found the mutilated bodies of Alex and William. It was a bear, they told me. This is the first time I've told anyone about the creature I saw. Part of me doesn't want to admit that it really happened, but I wasn't high that night in the lake, and I wasn't hallucinating. I'm still afraid that thing will find me again. I don't go camping anymore.
We gotta tell people that Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance, so you only pay for what you need. And we gotta do it fast.
Woo! New personal record, Limu!
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Wooden Nightmare. Three years ago, me and my friends John and Luke planned to spend our holidays in the woods, somewhere in the USA. We were 18 at the time. I and John lived in the UK. However, Luke moved to the US last year. We were always fascinated from the American forests and national parks, so we decided to go to the US for the summer. The flight went well, and thanks to our friend Luke and his dad, we arrived safely to their cabin in the woods. The day was uneventful. It was just some unpacking and preparation for the evening. The night was just messing around and having a barbecue. However, in the morning of day 2, it started getting strange. We saw some weird footprints near our cabin which were not there before, and those led to another part of the woods which we didn't visit previously, nor could anyone remember going to the woods that night, nor did anyone live nearby. So we figured that it might have been just a park ranger. At night, the strangeness continues. We were sleeping, and around 3 a.m. I started to get woken up by the sounds of footprints and something being dragged just outside of the cabin. But I figured that it just might be the park ranger or some animals, so I didn't say anything. In the morning when we left our cabin, we got greeted by the disturbing corpse of a person with hit guts spilled out. That's when we realized what got dragged. That's when I actually asked Luke, "Man, did you hear that weird sound of footsteps and something getting dragged last night?" Luke answered, "Yes. It was kind of weird, but I didn't expect it to be a victim getting dragged." I replied, "Yeah, right." Tom was checking out the body with Luke's dad. Tom stood frozen in fear of what he saw, and Luke's dad said, "I should have brought the gun." On the next morning, we received only an arm, and on which already looked like someone had bit partially, and there was something carved into it. "You are next." I felt a cold swift of wind crippling over my shoulder when I was reading the disgusting words in horror. We planned on calling the cops, but we had no signal. We thought about leaving, but in fear of running into it, we thought it might be safer just to stay at the cabin. That night, we all stood awake and couldn't sleep. We just stayed awake chatting about what we thought it could be, until all of a sudden we heard footsteps coming from outside. We went to investigate all together, and no one was outside, or at least it seemed to be the case. So we walked around the cabin, and by myself I checked the back corner with no windows pointing at this side. There seemed to be an outline of an old lady sitting, facing the back and crouching like she was been hiding from something, while the others were at the front of the cabin. I couldn't make much out of the darkness, so I went back to the others to tell them. But when they came to investigate, there was nothing. She was gone. So we thought about how strange it was and asked ourselves if she had something to do with the bodies and footsteps, and we all went confused back into the cabin. A few minutes later, Luke and his dad got tired and slept, but soon me and Josh heard a strange sound of a knocking, or more like smacking, on the window, which had woken up Luke and his dad. The dad went to investigate, and as soon as he opened the blinds, he jumped out of horror. A face of an old lady with dirt clothes, greasy hair, and a face looking like something from an Exorcist movie, and with parts of her skin and jaw decayed, revealing bones, and out of her teeth, you can call them saws, stuck out a bit of flesh from probably another person, and blood was coming out of it. It was very disturbing to see, and we all panicked. Whilst she distracted while breaking down the window, we took the opportunity to use the door as she managed to shatter the window. She must have heard the motor of our car as she was just bolting towards us in speed. Impossible for a person, especially for someone at that age, but we made it out of there just at the last second. As soon as we had signal again, we dialed 911. However, when the cops came to investigate that night, they saw the broken window and the remains of a 20-year-old man who went missing in those woods after going hiking with his friends, but there was no sign of the creepy granny. And we never went back to that cabin, with the exception of Luke's dad, who ended up selling the cabin to a housing company who later abandoned it. I wonder why. So creepy, possessed, cannibalistic zombie granny? Let's not meet again. Skinwalker took my cousin. When something like this happens, it happens out of absolutely nowhere with no warning. It's not some horror movie or story where you know something is about to happen. I'm going to describe what I felt and what I saw. I've been looking for somewhere to share this, and hopefully someone can tell me what happened. I had never heard of Reddit or skinwalkers or anything before this happened. I wish I could say something cliche like, I was on the Skinwalker Ranch, or my grandma is a Navajo, or some shit like that, but I can't. I had never heard of the Navajo Indians, or skinwalkers, or anything. I sure in hell did not believe anything like that existed, or even gave a fuck about it. I am 16 years old, and this happened in the summer of June 9th, 2018. I grew up in the suburbs near Atlanta, so I had a completely normal life until this happened. I was off of school, so me and my dad went to Denver to visit my uncle and aunt and my cousin. I have no other cousins my age except for this one, so we were pretty close and kept in touch often. His name is Charlie, but we share the same last name, cause his dad is my dad's brother, so I won't use our last name. Charlie was pretty big on mountain biking, and he wanted to take me on some mountain biking trails in Apex Park. The trails were not far away from civilization at all, and we weren't even going to spend the night there. We went down a few trails, everything was fine, and we passed by some people, so we weren't really alone. Absolutely nothing sketchy went down. It was hard to keep up with him. He slowed down for me and we had fun. It was around 6 p.m. and we were heading back to where we parked. Charlie was 18, so we drove ourselves. This is the part where everything goes to hell. We are riding back. Charlie is maybe 20 feet ahead of me. Then, the smell hit me. God, the smell. It was disgusting. At first, I thought maybe we passed by a dead animal or something. It was more metallic though, and it was very heavy in the air. Charlie stopped but didn't get off his bike. I slowed down and stopped next to him. He looked at me with a disgusting face. Do you smell that? What the fuck? The smell started to get stronger. It was so strong that I felt like gagging. Looking back, I wish that I had felt something watching us, or at least any indication that something was not right so that we could have left or found somebody. I guess Charlie had heard stories about these things, because I saw his face change from disgust to absolute fucking terror as the realization hit him. Oh fuck. In less than 1 second from him saying that, something went by so fast and tore him off the bike. I did not see it because I could barely process what the absolute fuck was going on. I was still on my bike staring at the place he just was. Chills flooded my body so fast that my vision went black even though my eyes were open. Then, the adrenaline hit me. My brain pounding, but I had no thoughts. I didn't scream. Then I fucking looked up. It was right there. So fucking close to me. Come closer. It looked down at me because it was huge, maybe a couple feet taller than me. I wish I could tell you I didn't get a good look, but it's always crystal clear in my memory. It was like a wolf, but standing upright like a person. Its fur was matted and greasy and fucking disgusting. But that wasn't what I was looking at. It had Charlie's face, smiling at me. The closest thing I could describe my reaction to is when the people in the Bird Box movie see the monsters. God, I am crying writing this right now. The smile was pure evil but indescribable. Its mouth was way too big and it was literally smiling from ear to ear. Then the eyes. Oh God, the eyes. They were pure black but not glossy, like the black that absorbs 99% of the light. At first, I couldn't even tell if he had eyes, but they were blacker than empty, if that makes sense. It is very hard to describe this. It wasn't breathing, just standing absolutely still. I could feel the strength radiating off of it, like a power not of this earth. There was no sign of Charlie anywhere, no screaming, nothing. I knew I was next. I knew 100% I was going to die. My eyes flooded, but it wasn't like I was crying. The pure fear and chills just made my tear ducts run. Suddenly, it dashed away so quick I felt like I heard the air rush around me. I felt someone grab my shoulder.
Kid, are you okay?
It was a fit guy in his mid-40s and his wife. I hadn't even heard them approach. Keep in mind that from Charlie saying, "Do you smell that?" to this guy grabbing me on the shoulder was about a 10-second span. All the things I had described were the emotions that were flooding through me at once, not actual thoughts. Then it hit me. I couldn't speak. I was gasping for air. My head pounding. Vision was blurry.
Are you okay, kid?
I just cried. I was trembling so hard the guy thought I was having a seizure. I don't remember leaving the trail. I just remember getting to the exit, then getting to the hospital. Charlie is gone. After that, he went missing, but I know he is dead. They only found his bike completely destroyed. They sent a search party after him. No one believes me. They think he just got lost or attacked by an animal. I went home. I have been diagnosed with PTSD now and nightmares almost every night. My life has been completely destroyed by this, and I know nothing will ever be the same. I couldn't even leave my house for a long time. The days after that, I spent researching what that thing was, and the closest thing I could guess would be a skinwalker. It's nice to know that I'm not the only one, and people on this site and online can actually believe each other. Everyone thinks I am fucking crazy. Hello, and welcome. Tonight we have what lurks beneath around the campfire with us. If you enjoy his narration, check out his channel. His information will be in the description box down below. Now, without further ado, let's get into these 6 ghoulish tales. This past October, I had worked at a haunt, that is, a haunted attraction at a local theme park. I was pretty good at managing the big crowds. I really enjoyed it when the crowds would get smaller. The groups of 10 to 20 people were coming in to my attraction. During times when the crowds were thinning like that, I loved scaring them with stories and legends I knew about. And one of my favorite legends to tell them were the Skinwalker legends. I would start off greeting the group and tempting them with an offer to tell them a story, asking them if they would like to hear a local legend, as we live in the desert and this haunt was tucked away in the heart of miles of desert land. When they all would agree, I would start my tale. Some of you may know about skinwalkers, and for those of you that do, you may know that native Navajo and Hopi tribes are fearful to even speak of this creature or to even utter its name. These monsters span from southern Arizona all through the New Mexico and the Mexican border, and across the lands of the native peoples, and Navajo believe them to be witches or sherman, an evil being with the supernatural power to shapeshift, typically by wearing the skin or masks of the animals they wish to walk as, a practice which is looked down upon by the Navajo people. This power is gained after killing a close relative or sibling, and imbues the being with many dark powers. The animal they appear as, however, always looks wrong. A deer or a coyote that stands on its hind legs and walks as a man does, a crow or owl that has a face or eyes that look too human to belong to an animal they mimic, and that glow red in the moonlight. In all the legends, it says there is always one sure way to identify a skinwalker. A skinwalker, no matter what, will never be able to move as the creature it appears as in its animal form. Skinwalkers are able to do other things as well. They can move at seemingly impossible speeds. They can mimic the voice of people, crying babies, your friends or loved ones' voices that you would trust. They will lure you out into the woods or into the pitch black of the nighttime desert, and once they have you isolated and you lay your eyes upon their face, it is said you will die an agonizing death. Skinwalkers can curse people and cause them great suffering. Often it is said they use a mixture that some call corpse powder when seen in their human form, which turns your tongue black and causes violent convulsions until you die. The worst part about skinwalkers, the reason native people dare not speak of it, it is believed that a skinwalker is capable of reading your minds, and the more aware of them you are, the more aware they become of you. So try not to think about it, but if on your ride home you see a coyote in your path, or hear the drums of native people echoing loudly through the darkness, take care and drive quickly, and pray it will not pursue you. And I would, almost always, be met with looks of horror and fear. It was my absolute favorite tale to tell for this reason. I would tell this story over and over to as many groups as I could. It wasn't a good idea to talk about them. I would say as much with each re-encounter of the legend, and much less in the middle of the desert, surrounded by inky blackness that engulfed everything the park's lights didn't illuminate. But I did. I felt safe. Nothing would happen to me. It was just a legend. That was until I drove home after my shift, around 1 in the morning, after a night of telling this particular story dozens of times to guests. As I drove through the twists and turns of the pitch-black mountainous desert road I traveled each night to go home, my high beams on, penetrating the darkness just enough for me to see the road and the first layer of brush on either side of it. My headlights shone on an animal. A coyote. At first, I thought it had just been the angle of the lights that hit it that made it appear to have no tail. But as I continued driving, I encountered the animal again. 3 times, each within several miles of each sighting. A distance any normal animal wouldn't be able to make, especially when running against the car going 65 miles per hour for most of the journey. Each time I would scan the road for wildlife and I would see it. There, just outside of the darkness, the coyote with no tail, staring at me from the side of the road. My stomach turned a bit, and I breathed deep, trying to tell myself I was just imagining things. The coyotes had tails, and none of them were the same animal. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. But I knew deep down I was lying to myself. I knew I was wrong. I knew it was real, and it was terrifying. I'm relieved to say I made it home safely that night, but still, every now and then when I drive through the desert in the darkness of night or glance out into my bedroom window into the blackness, I can see that coyote, that skinwalker. I hope it never decides I know too much, but I think that maybe, just maybe, it visits me to remind me of its presence, that it wants me to continue telling this story, to continue spreading awareness of their presence, so that it may claim lives to those who are the weak-minded enough to fall prey to it. And now that you know the story, maybe it will come after you.
I'd like to start this off with saying that I live kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I'm pretty secluded and I don't really have a whole lot of neighbors around me. It's just me and my 3 dogs. We like to go on hikes and walks during the evening time specifically. Now, where my property is, I have a lot of open fields and pastures with wooded areas that are loosely dense, all surrounding my property. I remember one evening walking my dogs like I normally do, and I began to get a really strange feeling. I felt like I was being watched, but I kind of just brushed it off until only a few moments later, all 3 of my dogs started acting up. They would bark and sit in place and whine and just act out of character. That's not like them. The further we went, the more ominous the feeling was. The point I remember calling it quits and telling my dogs, let's go back home, was when it got so dead that you could literally hear a pin drop, and I felt like I was being stared at by well over 100 eyes. The strangest thing about this is I walk the same path every day, and it's only a couple miles, and I've never had an issue. My dogs were quivering so bad that I knew there was something wrong. Now, I didn't see anything, and I also didn't hear anything, but I sure as hell felt it. I've been in this area long enough to know that the closest we have here that could potentially cause any danger is mountain lions, and even those don't scare my dogs or make me feel the way I did that evening. I got back home as quickly as I could and locked all my doors and windows. Fortunately for me, I haven't had any bizarre experiences since then, and I continue my evening walks with my dogs without any further disturbances.
I like the desert at night. They say it's dangerous to be out here, but I like it. It's good to sit by a campfire and drink a beer, out here where there isn't any noise or traffic. You can see all the stars because there aren't any electrical lights to chase them away. Sometimes the wind sings to you, but then somebody usually comes along and messes it all up somehow. Mostly it's drunks who want to beat you up because you're from the reservation. So when I hear pebbles shifting somewhere off to my left, the hair on the back of my neck starts to tingle and my hand inched a little closer to my Bowie knife. The figure that came walking out of the darkness didn't look very threatening. Just an old man wearing traditional Navajo clothing and leaning on a crooked walking stick as he shuffled quietly towards me.
Getting cold,
came the old man's voice, dry as the desert. I expected him to say more, but instead he just sat down across the campfire from me, laying the walking stick casually across his lap. There was something about him that made me uneasy, and my apprehension increased when his hand vanished into a leather pouch that hung from his belt. But he pulled forth only a crumpled pack of cigarettes, holding them slightly towards me.
Smoke?
Sure, I replied as my nerves began to relax. When he tossed me the pack, I noticed there were only 2 cigarettes left inside. I took one and tossed the pack back to him. I held my chrome Zippo towards him, but he instead took a little wooden match from behind his ear, scraping it against a small gray rock that dangled from a leather cord worn around his neck. The sudden flare of light illuminated his ancient, weathered face, and his eyes seemed to sparkle eerily for a moment. Then he sat smoking silently.
Dangerous out here at night, you know.
He spoke softly for a while.
Lots of things come out at night. Even things nobody believes in anymore. They still come around sometimes.
I smiled a little. You mean ghosts and goblins?
Maybe ghosts,
he answered after considering it a moment.
Not goblins, I don't think. Not even sure what goblins are. But there are other things too. Things like skinwalkers. You know about them?
A sudden chill ran the length of my spine as the old man studied me quickly. Mom used to tell me stories about them when I was little, I mumbled.
Then you know what can happen,
said the old man. They take the shape of a man and wear the skin of a man, but they're really more like an animal underneath. They have powers too. Folks used to say only a Sherman could defeat them. He turned his attention to the campfire. His image seemed to ripple behind the waves of heat rising from the flames. Embers danced around him like angry red fairies.
Lots of other things out here too,
he continued.
The Wendigo, the Chupacabra, all sorts of things. They don't come around much anymore, but sometimes they do.
Silence settled over us like a damp woolen blanket, the campfire seeming to begrudge us what little heat it was providing. The stars twinkling above seemed suddenly to be laughing silently, sharing some sinister joke amongst themselves. The thin slice of moon sank behind a lone cloud bank, as though unwilling to witness whatever might transpire. The beast attacked us without warning. I felt claws sinking into my back as a great weight fell upon me. Then it was gone, and I rose to see the old man falling backwards. Whatever was on top of him wasn't visible, but I could see jagged rips appearing in his clothing and in his flesh. Then suddenly he was thrusting the walking stick upward, and there was a terrible screeching sound. The creature fell backwards into the fire and became visible as it withered in the flames. I can't really describe it. Imagine a pale white maggot taller than a man, its bloated mushy body bristling with claw-like barbs. Something like a mouth at one end and rows of shark-like teeth lining the inside. A clump of black eyes that seemed completely lifeless as it rose from the fire and again hurled itself towards the old man. I'm not a hero. My brain was screaming for me to get out of there, just to run anywhere, to just get away. But then I heard the old man's screams, and I saw the empty cigarette pack lying crumpled on the ground, and something inside me stopped shaking and started getting angry instead. I tore away my clothes and then tore away my skin as well, revealing my true form. I was springing towards the ugly monstrosity before I really had time to think about it, which is probably just as well. As I struggled with the creature, attacking savagely with my own teeth and claws, I caught a glimpse of the old man rising weakly to his feet. His walking stick was beginning to glow faintly, casting an eerie green light upon him as he moved towards. He plunged the stick deep into the creature's side. The thing stopped biting at my face and made that deafening screeching sound again, but this time, it didn't stop screeching for a long time. I'm not sure if it died or just went someplace else where it faded down from view. I hope it died. The old man reached down to recover his walking stick from where it had fallen, watching me carefully. It's difficult for me to speak when I'm in my true form, but I can manage it if I concentrate.
What was it?
I managed to ask.
No idea, he answered with a puzzled frown. We stood staring at one another for a moment. You're gonna need a new shirt, I pronounced quietly, pointing a talon to his torn and ruined clothing. That's nothing, he chuckled. You're gonna need a new skin. But then his smile faded. His grip tightened on the walking stick as he studied me in the campfire's flickering light. You can relax, I lisped. Shaman skin won't work on me. His eyes drifted uncertainly to his walking stick. Still, he said softly, I'm supposed to try to destroy you. Yep, I hissed. Same here, old man. We continued staring uneasily at one another for a moment longer. Then the old man's smile slowly returned. Crazy world, ain't it? Crazy world, I agreed. As he turned to go, I glanced around and saw the shredded remains of my jacket. Snagging it up with a claw, I turned back towards the old man, shuffling away into the darkness. Hey, Pops, I called quietly, tossing him the fresh pack of cigarettes that had been in my jacket pocket. I think I managed something like a human smile. He nodded thanks and then vanished into the desert night. I sat back down beside my campfire. A million stars twinkled overhead. They say it's dangerous being out here alone in the desert, but I like it. Sometimes the wind sings to you, and all you have to do is sing back.
Back when I was in my early 20s, I used to hike all over the place with my friends. Specifically, my friends from high school, who I grew up with, and we all loved the outdoors fairly equally. I loved hiking and I loved being in the mountains, so it made sense for me that the Sierras in California were a great spot. There was one time when I was walking and hiking along with my friends in the Sierras in California when we had some extraordinary experiences camping out there. We were on a 10-day hike and we were trying to get through this certain part of the mountain. I can't remember the exact part. We were only into our hike about 3 or 4 days, and we had finally reached a clearing after hiking all day to set up camp. It was actually perfect timing since the sun was starting to go down and it was getting pretty dark. So, we decided to set up our camp and rest for the rest of the night before hiking the next day. That night, I was awakened by what sounded like extremely heavy bipedal footsteps rummaging around our camp, as well as the occasional angry grunting. What's scary is we're out in the middle of nowhere, and the Sierras specifically. There's not a soul around for miles and miles. Whenever this thing took a step, it sounded enormous. You could actually feel the ground shake a little. It never bothered the tent or even went near a tent now that I keep looking back at it, but it kept coming back into our campsite all throughout the night, making all sorts of ruckus and noise. All of us heard it and woke up several times to it, but we were all too scared to go out and look what it was. We know it definitely wasn't a bear and it wasn't a mountain lion. I don't think bears even do that, do they? We waited until sunrise and got the hell out of there. To this day, I don't know what it was, and I'm not sure if it's a Bigfoot or not. I generally don't believe in stuff like that, but I still, to this day, can't explain that strange experience. To this day, I usually don't have any strange experiences out in the woods, so this is a first for me.
Beginning in the early April 1986, the people in and around the little-known Chernobyl nuclear power plant began to experience a series of strange events revolving around sightings of a mysterious creature described as a large, dark, and mutated man with gigantic wings and piercing red eyes. People affected by this phenomena experienced horrific nightmares, threatening phone calls, and first-hand encounters with this winged beast, which became known as the Black Bird of Chernobyl. Reports of these strange happenings continued to increase until the morning of April 26, 1986, when at 1:23 a.m., Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant suffered a catastrophic stream explosion that resulted in a fire which caused a series of additional explosions followed by a nuclear meltdown. The power plant, located near Pripyat, Ukraine, Soviet Union, spewed a plume of radioactive fallout, which drifted over parts of the Western Soviet Union, Eastern and Western Europe, Scandinavia, and UK. Ireland and Eastern North America, large areas of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia were badly contaminated, resulting in the excavation and resettlement of over 336,000 people. The Chernobyl disaster, as the incident was dubbed, is considered the worst accident ever in the history of nuclear power. Following the meltdown, the subsequent explosions and fires, Soviet helicopters were dispatched to